filter in for just a moment here, and then we'll get started. A few seconds here. Okay, looks like we're holding at that number, so we'll get going. All right. Hello, good evening. I'm Daphne Adler. I'm one of the counselors at Los Altos High School, and I am thrilled to welcome everyone tonight for our study in the UK and Ireland overview session. And this is part of our International University Month webinar series that's been running this entire month, and we still have quite a few more sessions for next week as well. I am really excited to introduce our presenters to you in a moment. And before I do that, just a couple of things. So for anybody who has not seen our previous webinars, they are available to view on the counseling website. We're getting those uploaded as we get them. So you're welcome to view them there. To sign up for future sessions, visit Naviance or the College Career Center website, and you can get the Zoom links for the additional sessions coming up. And then for tonight, just a little bit of housekeeping. This session is being recorded, and we would love for you to ask your questions of our university representatives in the Q&A box at the bottom of your Zoom window. We will do a Q&A at the end, so feel free to ask questions and then we will take them at the end. All right, so without further ado, I'm going to introduce everyone. So we have today Maggie Cardosi from University College Cork in Cork, Ireland. We have Dr. Maggie Parke from Universities Wales. We have Ashley Sevadjian from University of Glasgow in Glasgow, Scotland. Peter Brimstone from Queen's University in Belfast, Northern Ireland, and Tim Pilkington from University of Essex in England. So we've got a representative from each region of the UK as well as Ireland. So hopefully we can get all your questions answered, and I will now turn it over to Peter. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much. And I will pull up this presentation and we will get going. If my keyboard would work, that would be super. There we go. So, hi everybody. Good evening or good morning, as it is for those of us fortunate enough to be in the United Kingdom. It is now just ticking past 2:30 in the morning. So my neighbours will be very pleased that I'm here talking to you in the middle of the night. My name is Peter Brimstone. I work for Queen's University Belfast in Northern Ireland, and myself and my colleagues are going to run you through what college is like in our part of the world. So we're very lucky that we have a representative from each of the 5 nations, I guess, of the UK and Ireland. And we're going to talk you through both from a high level what college looks like in our part of the world, but then some of the more detailed aspects of applications in both the UK and Ireland, and different parts and the different respective strengths and differences and similarities between each of our nations and institutions. To get started, I'm sure you're all wonderful at geography, but here is a map nonetheless of the UK and Ireland. There are 4 nations in the United Kingdom: England, Northern Ireland, Scotland and Wales. And as you can see there's a little map pointing out where some of our universities are. So the University of Glasgow in Scotland, the University of Essex in England, Study in Wales, which represents all of the Welsh universities, and Queen's University Belfast in Northern Ireland. Then, separate to the UK, you have Ireland itself and a representative from the University College Cork. So yes, there is the UK and Ireland. There are a few main differences to wrap your head around before we really dive into the detail of some of this, and those are quite common between the UK and Ireland, but they are quite different to what you would expect in the US. The major one to think about is the major. It is the length of the major and the structure of the major. In the US, you will be quite familiar with a 4-year system that looks at sort of a couple of years of quite general education, mixed curriculums, different classes, choosing from a broad spectrum of subjects for your first year, maybe your first 2 years before specialising later on. In the UK, that journey starts at a much earlier point in your university education. So in England, Northern Ireland, and Wales, in the United Kingdom and in Ireland, the vast majority of undergraduate majors are 3 years in length. You would declare your major on application. So at the point of applying to university, you choose the major and then you will study it from day one. So it's a real focused deep dive into the subject. In Scotland, it's a little bit more similar to the US, and my Scottish colleagues, I'm sure, will tell you that it's because the US system is actually based on the Scottish higher education system. So in Scotland, it is a 4-year program for undergraduate. You have a bit more flexibility in terms of your major, but generally you will choose a track to study on and follow it and only specialize within that track later on. So that is the big difference to get your head around, is that when you're going to the UK, it is about focused depth of study rather than maybe the breadth of study you would be expecting at a US college. And that's something really to keep in mind as you're doing your research and as you're thinking about the UK. The forefront of your mind has to be the subject you want to study. As I said, from that, there is no gen ed in the UK, so there's no general education. If you want to study physics, you will just study physics. You won't be taking history or English or Spanish or anything like that. You'll just be studying the subject you want to. Similarly, all of our programs are structured in the same way. All of our students are on honours tracks from day one, and the completion time is within that expected 3 or 4 year program. So they are very structured programs. The point is for you to finish in the time allotted, and our completion rates are well above 90–95% in that regard. Our admissions philosophy is very much tailored to the program. As I said, getting into your head early, it's about finding the fit for a program for you. And our admissions follows that process. It's about a fit between you and your major rather than a fit between you and a class or you and a particular institution. This is very much about your subject. And again, leading on from that, important to have in mind, choice of major is key because in the UK and in Ireland, it is very rare to transfer between majors or between institutions once you get going. So that's just some high level stuff to have in mind as we get on. And what that looks like in practice, just to try and bring it to life a little bit more, is the structure of your degree. So in England, Wales, Northern Ireland, and Ireland, undergraduate year 1, it is core classes in your chosen degree, with years 2 and 3 then specialising through elective classes and a much deeper dive into your subject area. For Scotland, you have that broader choice for years 1 and 2, but then again, years 3 and 4 is real deep dive into your subject area. We do also have the options of doing master's degrees in 1 year anywhere in the UK and Ireland. So really, again, if you're thinking about a 4-year college journey in 4 of our nations, that could net you a bachelor's degree and a master's degree in the same time you would do an undergraduate degree in the US. That is the kind of the dull high level stuff out of the way. I'm going to hand over now to Maggie in Cork, who is going to talk you through some of the nicer things about why you would want to come to the UK and Ireland to study. And I'll give it a rest for a while.
Cool, thanks, Peter. So that was a great kind of high level overview of kind of what things look like. But as you said, I'm gonna kind of go over some of the nicer things about maybe why you would want to study in the UK and Ireland. Peter, I don't know, could you advance the slide there? There we go, cool, thanks. So Peter already talked a little bit about kind of the fact that you can study exactly what you want from really day one of your undergraduate studies. So we don't have general education requirements. And so you can really do a deep dive into whatever subject it is that you're passionate about, be it sciences, biology, physics, English, history, politics, languages, anything like that. Another really cool thing that we offer in the UK and Ireland is that we actually have direct entry into professional programs directly from high school. So if you're particularly interested in fields like medicine, dentistry, law, even veterinary medicine, you can actually enter into those majors directly from high school and finish out at a much faster rate than you would if you wanted to go into those areas in the United States. We also, as we mentioned, we have very transparent entry requirements. So you know exactly what you need to get into these programs from the beginning. So there's really no gray area. Either you're qualified for this program or you're not, and we can talk about some maybe other options for you. We also we don't take into consideration class rankings. So we're looking primarily at things like your GPA, test scores, things like that, although that does depend on the institution and the country system, which we're going to get into a little bit later. Next one, please. Awesome. So some other really lovely things about why you might want to study in the UK and Ireland. Big thing is that it's quite cost effective. Our tuition fees and general cost of living, so all in cost for your year of study, is going to be a little bit lower than out of state and even in-state options in the United States. So on average, you're looking at a total cost of attendance of between $30,000 to $40,000 per year. And that does vary depending on the institution, but again, that's kind of a much lower cost than a lot of options here in the US. A lot of our schools also offer scholarships to international students, and many of our schools are also recognized by the federal aid system here in the US, so you can use your federal aid at schools in the UK and Ireland. Housing, in my opinion, is also much nicer in the UK and Ireland because instead of having a dorm room that you share with a roommate and a bathroom with 40 other people in your hall, you get your own room in the UK and Ireland. So you've got a nice private space and independent apartment living styles on our campuses. It's also quite safe in our countries. We're going to talk a little bit more, but we tend to all be very well known for safety and welcoming atmospheres. And also just the experience of studying in Europe. You are in cities and in regions with rich cultural heritage. So, and very easy travel to the rest of Europe. So the cultural experience in and of itself is really something that would stand out if you're studying with us. And then, and these are just a couple of questions that you maybe wanted to ask yourself, if you're considering studying in the UK and Ireland. Are you self-motivated? Are you capable of the independent study that is a little bit more common at UK and Irish universities as opposed to US universities? We've talked a lot about having to know exactly what you want to study from the beginning. So are you passionate about your field of study and your major? And are you open-minded? Are you willing to accept the challenges that come from studying an ocean away from your friends and family? And are you excited at that prospect? Are you willing to kind of just jump in and create this really unique opportunity for yourself? All right, so I'm going to hand it on to, I believe, the other Maggie to talk to you a little bit about some of these nicer things about the UK and Ireland.
Thank you, Maggie. Hi, I'm Maggie. I'm from Study in Wales. So I represent 8 of the 8 Welsh universities. So just like these are all representing singular universities, there's 8 of us in Wales. I just offered to do this because it was 2:30 in the morning. So running through student housing. Student housing is quite different in the UK than in the US, mostly down to the single rooms that were mentioned before. You pretty much always get your own bedroom and your own bathroom. You don't share, which is lovely. I myself lived in dorms for 4 years as an RA. So we do have a very similar system to the US, that you'll have somebody that's there 24/7 if you need them for anything from homesickness to how do I get to the library to how do I change my light bulb. They're very much there to help support you in any of the concerns or questions that you have as a learning community. Most of the housing sites will also have cafes, shops, pubs, mail rooms, gyms, all the stuff that you would expect a student village to have. Nice perk here, you don't have to move out over the holidays. You might have heard that from some international sites that they require you to move out over Christmas, Easter, and summer. Sometimes in the summer you do, it just depends on the contract, but it's all super clear when you are looking at housing, which one you would want to be in if it's year round or if it's school term. I think that's it for that one. Let's go on to the next bit. Alongside your housing, just because we get that all the time, is what am I going to do outside of classes? So it's very much your life outside of the classroom. The biggest thing I always tell students is join something. I don't care what it is, but join something. And Daphne heard me talk about this earlier today. When I first arrived in the UK, we had a club fair. So every campus will generally have some sort of an event to showcase all of the clubs and societies that they offer. And we could sign up for anything. So I think I signed up for about 30 clubs because the following week was called Have a Go Week. So I got to have a go at horseback riding, rowing, rock climbing, coast steering, all these amazing things where I got to meet cool people, take advantage of the location I was in and get outside and do cool stuff that definitely would have cost me like 50 pounds per activity. And I did it all for free. And then I ended up actually signing up for 2 clubs. So it just became this really cool week of getting to know my area, getting to know people, getting a little bit outside my comfort zone, but then finding a community. And once I joined that club, I had a built-in structure. So it gave me, a couple of workouts a week. It gave me a social night a week. And it also gave me a way to engage with new people without just being the American. I was a rower, I was a singer, whatever the thing was. And that was a really big deal. So the clubs and societies on campus, definitely the physical side of it. We've got lots of religious societies, community support societies, national societies. So most campuses will have an American society or an expat society. And usually that just means we get together for the Super Bowl and have Thanksgiving together and things like that. And it is nice to have some American friends, even when you're having this international experience, because they're also here for a set amount of time. So you often get to travel with them and, weekend trips and go exploring all the castles. Whereas my Welsh friends are like, you're going to the castles again? Like they're always here. Like, why? They're not as special. Travel is also a huge deal. So the fact that we can pop anywhere we want in Europe for cheaper than an Amtrak train ticket, anywhere in the US is pretty substantial. So where I am up in rural North Wales, I'm in London every Monday. There's a direct train down there 6 or 7 times a day. But I can live up in a national park, but pop to the city when I want to. There's a ferry to Dublin, so I can pop on the ferry to Ireland for the weekend if I'd like. Flights to mainland Europe are about 2 hours from most places in the UK, and you can get tickets for less than $30 to mainland Europe. I flew to Italy for $26 a long time ago, obviously. Pre-COVID. It was only about 2 years ago. So there's a lot of opportunities for travel, and all of our campuses will have international support offices, and they will help organize travel, give suggestions and tips for where you could go, how you should travel, safety in hostels, all that kind of stuff. International student support is also a separate topic, just to kind of note up to you that this is the first time for you, but it's a well-oiled machine for most of our campuses. We're very used to receiving international students, to the concerns and questions that the students or the parents may have, to the separate challenges that could come as being an international student, like how do I open a bank account? How do I get a doctor's appointment? How does this work? So we run sessions to help with all those questions. Also, I think we talk about healthcare later, but it's free and covered under the NHS. It's part of your visa charge. So once you're in the system, it's quite easy to step into registering for a doctor and getting a job and opening a bank account, all those living abroad things. But the International Student Support Office will help with that. They also help with some of the real practicalities. Most of the offices will run airport pickup services. So they'll meet you at the airport at the beginning of the school year, bring you back to campus, help you carry a suitcase upstairs, give you a walking tour to the grocery store. So these very welcome to the UK. We know this is a little bit scary and a little bit different, but we're going to give you some real structure and practicalities as you go through this new adventure. I think that's it for that one. And then just a note on fees and funding. There's so many factors in this. So this is a really general overview for education, but I will tell you the main reason I went to the UK was location. I wanted to live in Narnia, but the main reason I stayed was cost. The academics were excellent. Degrees transfer back to the US in nearly every instance. I know there's a couple questions here about that, so we'll make sure we touch on credit transfer and things like that. But the cost was the real consideration. The only schools I looked at in the United States for my graduate degrees were $48,000 a year and $52,000 a year for a 2-year master's and a 5-year PhD. Where I ended up was $11,000 a year, and after scholarships, it was $7,000 a year. And it was a FAFSA school, so I could use US federal loans. I could get a part-time job. I became an RA, so I didn't pay for rent. So yes, I'm in debt at the end of this, but I was in debt about $35,000 at the end of a PhD. I'm okay with that. And I get to live in Narnia. So, bonuses. So this is just a little general overview of what you could expect for some of the costs. And this is a range. Most of our campuses will never be more than $30,000, I would guess. There are some upper level ranges there for medicine and dentistry. I think we touch on that as a subject later. If not, we can definitely cover it in the Q&A. Cost of living is a lot more affordable than you think as well. Most of the accommodation will include all of your bills. Most of the accommodation tends to be between like 85 and 150 pounds per week for some of these all-inclusive locations. Groceries in general tend to be way cheaper than the US. I'm always appalled when I go back to visit my folks and do the grocery run, and $150 later, I'm like, ah. So just cost of living is way more affordable than I think people think in the UK. There's also a load of scholarships available. Each campus will have their own scholarships. They'll have loyalty scholarships if you stay on for a different degree. They'll have academic merit scholarships based on your GPA. They might have departmental scholarships. School of Business might have a little bit of extra, to contribute to your costs. It all tends to be a tuition discount. It's rare that you would find a full tuition waiver. That doesn't really happen in the UK. It's all just little bits that kind of bring your costs down. And then a lot of campuses are FAFSA schools, so you can use US federal loans. There's also a number of scholarships from the US that don't have country restrictions. So that's really important when you're looking at your scholarships. Very few of them in that fine print will restrict it to USA only schools. So I had a scholarship from like the Optimist Club and the Lions Club, but there's also the Rotary Club and all these bigger ones that can contribute towards your degree. There are sometimes athletic scholarships, but like I said before, they'd be very small and they'd be a tuition discount. It's not like the US where you're going to get headhunted for your sport and have a full degree waiver. We do have sports. They are competitive. I came from a Division III rowing program in Virginia and still joined the rowing over here and found it, really competitive and really elite. But it is not the central element of all life. It's rare that you would have somebody come to that school because of that sport. You can still be an elite athlete alongside your education, but the two don't usually affect the other. So just a different way of thinking about sports. I think that's it for this bit. So I'll pass it on now. I don't recall who's this, sorry. Ashley.
Thank you, Maggie. Hey, everybody. So I'm going to start off by talking a little bit about your admissions journey. So how can you actually get started with this process of studying in the UK or in Ireland? Well, you're doing the right thing now by starting your research. It's probably best to start your research as early as possible. A lot of students begin thinking about this if they're in their junior year, but if you're in your senior year, it's not too late. There's still plenty of time to make this happen. So begin now. Take these couple of months to, research the universities that are right for you, which country in the UK or if you prefer Ireland is best suited for you. Think about the courses on offer in that major, because you do have to know to an extent what you would like to study. As Peter mentioned, you will be studying your major from day one. So that's a lot of pressure to think about right away. So really put in the research to deciding the institution that's right for you. So you can do so by combing through websites, by attending webinars with individual schools or one-on-one sessions with representatives. Another great resource I always like to recommend to students is to check out if websites have a live chat with current students or a YouTube channel, because oftentimes there'll be things like vlogs and things like that on YouTube channels for universities. But definitely begin your research as early as you can. So once you're thinking about, you know what you want to apply to, the schools you want to submit applications to, you can begin that process normally in the fall. So students will begin working on their Common App applications or their UCAS applications anytime from October up until January. That tends to be the window when you'll be thinking about submitting your application. So find out if your school is on the Common App or if you'll have to apply through UCAS. You can familiarize yourself with whichever method is preferred. Normally, students will submit their applications by January 15th if you're applying through UCAS. Some schools will have rolling admissions, so just be sure to look out for that for the course you're hoping to apply to. Normally, when you apply by January, you should hear back whether or not you've been made an offer of study. by the spring. So in the UK, you do receive what's called an offer of study. So it can be either a conditional or an unconditional offer. This is great because it means that students can actually apply with any pending qualifications. So if there are any exams that you hope to sit in the spring, you can actually include those in your application. And if there's anything still outstanding, we would then offer a conditional offer of study where you would just have to provide evidence of what you've stated in your application. If you have everything required, then you might receive what's called an unconditional offer. But both mean that you've been admitted. One just means that there's a few more follow-up details for you to submit to us. Once you're made an offer, that's great. It also will tell you when you need to tell us your decision by. Oftentimes, schools in the UK might be flexible for when you need to make that decision, but normally it's May 4th. So definitely check with your rep. So in the UK and Ireland, it might differ, but normally you have to make your decision by the summer. And then in September, you'll be ready to come and join us. So in the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about the UCAS application. So when you're applying to schools in the UK, you would likely be applying through UCAS, which is the University and Colleges Admissions Service. It's essentially the Common App of the UK. It's a very streamlined and simple process. I actually studied my degree in Scotland and I applied using UCAS, and it was very straightforward. UCAS allows you to submit one application that can go to up to 5 different programs or universities. So I'd just like to highlight that it is 5 choices total with that application. So if you wanted to apply for English, history, and a joint honors at one university, that's 3 of your choices, and you would have 2 remaining. But you can apply to 1 choice at 5 different institutions, but you guys get the idea. It is 5 choices in total with that application. But the good thing about UCAS is there's one set application fee, and it's $31 for all 5 applications. So there is a cap on how many universities you can apply to when you're applying through UCAS. All of our students in the UK apply through using UCAS as well. So it's just a way to make it a bit more fair for everybody. There are some application deadlines that you should be aware of. So when you're applying to a school in the UK on UCAS, January 15th is the application for most programs, but there are some programs that will have different deadlines. So for instance, if you're applying to medicine, dentistry, veterinary medicine, or either Oxford or Cambridge, you must submit your application by October 15th. So that is something to be aware of. But all other majors will usually be January 15th. And as I mentioned before, some schools in the UK might also be on the Common App, and they might have rolling admissions. So definitely check on the school's webpage that you're interested in applying to. Okay, next slide. In terms of the entry requirements, these are set out by each university, so they will vary from institution to institution. It's usually very focused on your academic profile. Again, this circles back to what Peter was talking about earlier about how you will be studying your major right from day one. So we really want to make sure that you're up for that challenge of diving straight in with no general education or core curriculum requirements. So we want to see that you have a track record in relevant subject areas usually. So this could normally be a combination of your high school diploma, AP or SAT subject tests, or perhaps the SAT or ACT. So an example from Queen's University Belfast is that you would need to have an SAT of 1290 or above, in addition to 3 APs at 5, 5, and 4. So once again, you'll just have to look to see what your particular major asks of you, and also by institution as well. So if you're hoping to apply for something that is maybe math or science related, you will likely need to have some relevant subject tests or AP tests in those areas. For instance, engineering normally requires you to have maths and physics, for example. But as I mentioned before, you don't need to have completed these tests before you apply. You can submit your application even if you're sitting tests in the spring. Normally, we would just then ask that you provide that evidence once you receive it. And once you've uploaded all of your documents, then everything is changed into an unconditional offer as well. I would also like to highlight that obviously we're in very special and unique circumstances right now. With the pandemic, a lot of universities in the UK have been offering students a test optional route for their application. This will vary school by school, not only on if it's being offered, but also what exactly that's going to look like per school. So for instance, what you might be able to expect if a school in the UK is test optional is they'll still put an emphasis on your academic profile by looking at your transcript and taking into consideration your application as a holistic approach. But we will still be looking for things like, for instance, has the student challenged themselves? Have they been taking honors or AP classes? Have they performed well? Have they been taking relevant subject areas and that sort of thing? So again, will vary by institution. So definitely get in touch with a rep from that school that you're interested in applying to so you can find out the specific requirements if they are test optional, and if not, what their requirements are. So on UCAS, it's very focused on, the academic profile for the student. There's this old saying that in the US, they're after your head. In the UK, in the US, they're after your heart. And in the UK, they're after your head. It's very much true. We are very focused traditionally on your academic profile, but there is a personal statement as well that you would need to include in your UCAS application. And you will need one letter of recommendation. This can be from your counselor or a teacher that knows you well. So I think Tim is going to go a little bit more in depth of what the personal statement and how we look at those applications as well. But thank you very much. And I'll pass this over to Tim.
That's great. Thank you, Ashley. Good evening, everyone. My name's Tim. I work for the University of Essex. So what do UK universities use when we're considering students? It's fairly straightforward, and that's really one of the good things about UCAS. We're really going to be looking at three things. We're going to be first of all looking at your academic profile, so the grades that you have received or will receive, as well as your academic potential. We'll be looking at your personal statement. That's your opportunity to reflect your relationship with the subject that you're due to be studying, and then the reference as well. And that's it. So it's a lot less abstract when compared to some applications in the US. And as Ashley said, we're after your head. So first of all, we're going to be looking at your academics. When you input these into UCAS, we'll be looking at any transcripts or grades which you had received so far, as well as predicted grades. The application can be made up to a year in advance, and offers are made on a conditional basis. For students who would require to take an English language examination, that's not the case for the vast majority of US students. We'll be looking at that as well. And then there may be specific testing depending on the course or sometimes the university that you're applying to. These tend to be sort of the anomalies. Medicine tends to be one that pops up. So there are a couple of entrance examinations which students might be required to take if they're choosing to study medicine in the UK. Similarly, there are some law schools that still take an examination known as the LNAT, but really for most universities, there isn't going to be a further test beyond your APs or SATs or whatever it might be. There are also specific requirements per course. So some universities are very specific in the UK that they require APs or they require SAT subject tests. The reason for that is that at A-level in the UK, so with the final year of high school over here in the UK, we really only take 3 subjects. And so universities consider sort of APs or the subject tests as a reflection of those, or as a comparison to those. So for example, if you are looking to study something like engineering or biology, then you might be required to prove your academic competence in a given area. So for engineers, they might require an AP in maths, for example. And that's the academics out of the way. And then next we'll be looking at really the personal statement. This is often the one that takes the most time to get one's head around, but it's fairly straight down the line. We're really looking for a student who has and can display a genuine interest in the course that they're choosing to study. And that's it. So we it's doesn't need to be written in a complicated way at all. We want to see why you want to study the subject, any contemporary issues in the subject that are particularly interesting to you, or any specific academics in the field that might have kind of fueled your interest, any professional ambitions you have after the course, or any particular areas of the course that you want to be exploring. That's what we need to be seeing in the personal statement. And then there's the referee statement. So this is like a letter of recommendation, usually from a teacher or a guidance counsellor who can speak to skills in a specific area. Can I move to the next slide, please? Okay, so that's what we are looking for. What are we not looking for, or how does it differ with US applications? Well, first of all, we don't really want to see too much of a focus on extracurricular activities. When you're evincing these, it's usually through the personal statement, and it varies by university. At Essex, we tend to say leave 70% of your personal statement to academics and your relationship with the course, and you can leave perhaps 30 or 20% to explain what you've been doing in your spare time. And there may even be universities who might offer smaller athletic scholarships, but it's not going to play a factor in admission to the university. Similarly, with demonstrated interest, it's obviously very flattering to see on a UCAS application that a student has a particular affinity to one of the universities or wants to display that. But again, it's not something which we require as universities. We don't need to see that you have a particular interest in one given school. And remember, when you're applying through UCAS, you only get one shot at the personal statement. So that application is being sent to 5 schools. So any reference to a particular school is going to be to the detriment of 4 other applications. There are some courses in the UK which might have a specific quota for international students. They tend to be health related courses, but for the vast majority of other courses, all applications, provided that they're handed in by the deadline, are given equal consideration, equal weighting by the admissions office. And similarly with things like legacy, it's great to see that perhaps your dad or brother or whatever has studied at the university, but it's not going to be playing into the admissions decision. There might be some universities who will offer a family scholarship or something like that, but that will be minimal. And whether your family has studied at the university or not isn't really a big deal in the admissions process. Can I move to the next slide, please? Just a few extra things that you might encounter depending on the course that you're studying. Some universities might require 4 samples of written work, mostly for humanities. So there's some courses like creative writing that might require additional submissions. So the humanities and arts subjects. Similarly, Oxford and Cambridge really have their own admissions processes. This is why they have the earlier deadline, because they might be required to interview students or have separate testing for students. So yes, when you're considering UK applications, it's best to get your head around Oxbridge before you make an application if you choose to apply there. Similarly for art and design majors, they may well require to see a portfolio of your work. As I mentioned before, admissions tests and assessments are rare for most universities. Oxbridge, again, for many of their subjects, may have separate admissions examinations. And then for some specific subjects, tend to be the vocational ones, things like law and medicine may require a separate examination as well. And then again, interviews, rare. Medicine, Oxford, Cambridge, most other universities wouldn't require for you to sit an interview. Finally, there are auditions as well. So some acting schools, for example, are acting school auditions in the US each year. So there might be separate parts, but really UCAS is going to be enough for most applications. I think that's everything from me for this part, and I'm moving to Maggie from Cork.
Great. Thank you so much. And I think a lot of what has been said about the kind of emphasis on your academics and particular like differences in subject requirements and different entrance requirements subject to the universities and the program they are applying to are very much the case for Ireland. So I think kind of keep all of that in mind. I think the big difference when we're applying to schools in the Republic of Ireland is that we are not on the UCAS system. So you do need to apply separately to each Irish institution. But the good thing is that there's only 9 of us, so a much smaller number. And all of us would have our own direct application, and some schools would actually be on the Common App as well. So you may be able to find some of us there. I'd say the direct applications are the most common route. And like I said, individual applications to each college are the way. Most of us would kind of follow the same type of calendar of admission as you would be used to in the United States that schools in the UK would follow too. So rolling from about, September, October onwards, kind of again, dependent on the university. The only thing to be aware of though is that if you are interested in health science related fields like medicine or dentistry, those applications do need to be submitted early. But other than that, I think, let's see, one thing to mention too is that, again, we are aware of the situation with access to safe testing sites for SAT and ACT. So many of the Irish schools are looking at going test optional or test flexible. So again, consult each of those websites or each of those universities separately to see what their policy is going forward into 2021. But yeah, I think that's kind of the big stuff for Ireland. We can move on.
Hello, sorry, it's me again. I've got a few more slides and then I'll get out. So how do you find out more? Well, there's kind of unlimited resources available to you, really. I mean, I'd say the first thing to do is obviously to speak with your counsellor and with university reps. So, I mean, we were just saying with Daphne, she's got such a wide range of international contacts now and contacts within the university. And that's kind of our job. So it's our role to be the main point of contact for students from North America who are looking to apply to the university. So if you have specific questions relating to an institution, please do get in touch. Beyond that, there's the UCAS website. That's incredibly useful, not just for the application side of things, but also for university information. It's got a really good course search functionality. So you can basically type in any keywords or buzzwords, particular areas that might be of interest, and it will come up with a long list of courses and the universities that offer them. There are numerous university guides, including Times Higher Education and the Complete University Guide, as well as rankings. Universities are pretty on point with their social media right now. So things like YouTube's and Instagram will be able to give you a flavor of what being a student is like. Similarly, listening to students who have done it previously, I often find that's the best way to communicate with US students, is to have a student from the US who has kind of lived the experience and understands what it's like from the US perspective to study in the UK. So I think that'll be everything for that slide. My next, if I can, thank you. My next slide is about England. So similar to the map that Peter had showed earlier, everything in red there is England. It's the largest of the 4 nations in the UK. We're home to 55 million people and over 20,000 US students and growing. So we're seeing increased interest in students looking to study abroad. So long may that continue. We are home to Shakespeare, Oxbridge, tea, fish and chips, James Bond, the Beatles, Gordon Ramsay, James Corden. These examples are getting worse actually, but yes, home to a lot of the British things that you will have seen on TV. But more importantly, we're home to over 100 universities. We've been doing higher education now for close to 1,000 years. I think it's about 900 or something like that. So we're also home to the UK's, the #1 international student city, the city of London. And yeah, as we had mentioned before, we have this early degree specialism. Now, if I can move to the next slide, please. Thank you. So as we mentioned before, we have this early degree specialism. So students are able to study precisely what they enjoy studying without the hindrance of other academic areas that they don't want to be doing. There are exceptions to this. So if students were to integrate a placement year as part of their course, or a master's as part of their course, or a study abroad period. Similarly, medicine is 5 years, architecture can technically be 7, but for most degrees, they're 3 years in duration. It's a truly international experience. At the University of Essex, it's over 35% of our students are considered as overseas. The UK has lots of students from the European Union, from the Americas, from East and South Asia. I think the Russell Group average is 25%. So yeah, most universities have a very large international population, which certainly adds to the learning experience as well as your contacts post-graduation. There's a huge sort of variety and diversity of universities in the UK. And it's a fairly common misconception that when you come and study in the UK, you're going to be, when you study in England, I should say, you will be studying at an ancient university, or you'll be studying in a castle, or you might have ideas of Hogwarts and those kind of things. Most universities in England are actually sort of 19th century and beyond. We do have a couple of ancient universities. Scotland has a few more, as does Wales. But beyond that, there are collegiate universities, so universities that are made up of kind of independent colleges. There are campus universities. There are universities integrated within the city. For example, London's got 20 plus universities in the city alone. It's also a great opportunity to be traveling, and it's often the kind of the profile of a student from the US who's coming to England is that they've got a sense of adventure, and they want to be traveling, and England's very good for that. It's very small and easy to get around, and there are airports in and around London and Manchester and the large cities, so it's very easy to get into Europe and travel. As part of the student visa, this is for all of the UK, the student will be allowed to work as part of the visa, and something which was introduced recently to the UK was a post-study work visa. So students will be able to stay and work in the UK for 2 years after they have graduated. So if you really wanted to work on that British accent, you'd be able to do that. Can I move to the next slide, please? Okay, a few more slides about the University of Essex, and then I'm done. So I work at the University of Essex. We're a relatively modern university. We were established in 1963 and first started teaching in 64. We are home to 15,000 students, over 35% are overseas, with 140 nationalities represented. We have a number of campuses or locations, the largest of which is Colchester. It's the UK's oldest recorded town. It is less than an hour from London. It's 45 minutes on the train, and that's where a lot of our courses are taught. We have a campus in London as well. That's our Loughton campus. That's home to our acting school, which I'll speak more to in one moment. And then we have a campus in Southend as well, which is a sort of a beach location in the UK, which does certain business courses and dentistry courses. If I can move to the next slide, please. So Essex is home to a growing number of students from the US. And what I love about our US students is they all decide to come to the university for different reasons. Our university is a large sort of vibrant campus university that's very close to or indeed in London. So for the students studying on the Colchester campus, they like the idea of having like a large campus environment that's within an hour of the big city without committing to studying in London and the additional costs that come with that. Similar to most UK universities, we're FAFSA accredited, but there are a couple of course areas that I wanted to bring your attention to. We've got a very famous acting school at the University of Essex. It's called East 15. It's first for drama, according to The Guardian, and yeah, it's consistently one of the highest ranking acting schools in the UK. They've got a number of courses relating to acting and physical theatre and world performance, and it's the only non-American school in the world to be recognised by IRTA. So we do our our auditions overseas. They go to California and New York each year, and yeah, it's a big school for our US students. Similarly, as a university, we've always had a history of being a very politically active university. I think we were the second university in the world to approach human rights as an academic discipline, and we're particularly famous for the field of politics and international relations. We're currently 29th in the world for that particular area, according to the QS subject rankings, and again a large area of interest for our US students. Similarly, we also have a lot of US students on our sports programs. We do have a number of postgraduate students mainly, but a few undergraduates as well. We've got a very strong basketball and volleyball program at the university, and there are a number of scholarships available for US students. I believe that's everything from myself, so I'll be passing over to Welsh Maggie.
That's me.
Thank
Welsh
you.
Maggie. That's me. Hello. Thank you for that. Yes, so I'm Maggie. I'm from Study in Wales. So I'm representing the 8 Welsh universities that we have in Wales. So I'm going to keep this very general about Wales. Won't go into massive details about each of the institutions, but those are the 8 universities that we have and the locations that you'll find them in Wales. If you want to skip on to the next one. Wales in general, I think just a few bits that I want to point out about it is, and the reason I chose it is just because it's a little bit different. They have their own language. You don't have to speak Welsh, but you certainly can speak Welsh. The campuses offer it for free if you want to pick up some Welsh. It's this thriving, living Celtic nation that just seems a little bit under the radar, and I absolutely love that. We don't have massive groups of tourists in the summer, filling places and following roses through towns and stuff. It's just kind of a bit of a hidden gem. That being said, it does still have some massive draw to it, and Cardiff is one of the things. I think this is the capital city of Wales. It has an extremely metropolitan lifestyle. There's great shopping and concerts and restaurants, bars, but very much a neighborhood feel. There's only 350,000 people. You can walk across it in about 45 minutes. But it is the seat of government for Wales. So we have a lot of work experience and internship opportunities with the government there. Very accessible in terms of media as well. BBC has a huge hub there. Doctor Who is filmed there. His Dark Materials, the recent adaptation, is filmed there. So lots of stuff is happening in Wales creatively and governmentally and business-wise. So it's a great hub. And yes, an extreme, metropolitan space, but it's only a 2-hour train ride to London, and it's about 20 minutes from a national park. So you can have this kind of experience, but get outside the city and you're in complete nature and surrounded by castles and ponies. So pretty nice option. I'm going to pass into the next one. And this is a picture I actually took on my phone a couple weeks ago. So this is normal. This is my backyard. This is Snowdonia National Park. We have 3 national parks in Wales, take up about 30% of the land in Wales. So this is just a general overview. You've heard a fair bit about it already of why Wales, US versus UK degree. Like I said, for me, it was very much about location. I wanted to live in this beautiful spot. Wales has some of the lowest cost of living in the UK, but extremely accessible. I'm in London every Monday teaching a class, so I can easily pop down there. But the difference is I pay for a month in rent what friends in London pay for a week in rent. So it is just a definite cost of living adjustment. And I've got, a beautiful little converted chapel on a hillside when I put this together. And London, you might be in a studio flat, a solid hour outside of the city. So just the accessibility side of it and the affordable option. But I stayed for academics and costs. So it is the shorter, it is the more focused. We had a couple questions in the chat about courses and changing courses. If you're not as interested in something that you started with, can you switch? And it is tricky. It is quite focused. So in those 3 years, it's quite structured what you need to complete in each of those years. That being said, the first year is really general within your subject. So what I always say, and Daphne's probably tired of hearing it, but you don't need to know what you want to do with your life. You just need to know what you want to study. We'll help you figure out the career paths, the work experience, the internships. It's built into most of our programs. So you don't need to know what you want your job to be. You just need to know what you want to study. So if you think, definitely psychology, you can start with psychology. It's super general your first year. And if you want to switch from clinical to neuro, that's fairly straightforward because everybody's taking the same stuff the first year. If you start with psychology and want to switch to ocean sciences, that's a little trickier. You do have to start over generally. So just keep that in mind when you're going through this. Equal degrees, as you've heard before, everything transfers back to the US, barring some certification courses. So it's just double checking on that, what your state would recommend. It's like if you got your teaching certificate in California and wanted to move to Oregon, you just have to get recertified for that state. So some places completely transfers back just fine. Others, you just need to be aware of what you might have to do upon your return. All of our campuses are free to apply if you apply directly. There's a really small fee if you apply through UCAS, as said. A few of our institutions are on Common App, so there's lots of different routes that you can take to actually get through the application process. Healthcare was mentioned as well earlier. I guess I would point out in Wales, your prescriptions are free, so everything is free. There's a small copay in the rest of the UK, but it's free in Wales. And the main draw for me was this landscape. So we have an incredibly gorgeous space. It's silly what's out my back garden. There's literally castle ruins within a 20-minute walk from my house. Like, that's just silly, and you never get used to it. I'm on 15 years in, and it's still surreal. I think I've got one more slide. Yep. Other perks of Wales, we do have that single accommodation at all of our campuses, and you have assistance finding off-campus housing as well. So if you start on campus your first year and then decide you want to get a flat with your friends, all of our offices will be able to review contracts and suggest landlords that you might want to look at for houses, and guide you in that process. So you always have that kind of extra level of support with the Welsh International offices. All that support as well, we've got airport pickup, visa funding, travel advice, student life and clubs. We're actually quite well known for our clubs, believe it or not. I think it's just because of where we are. The student life off campus is just as important as the academic work on campus. So because we have all this access to outdoor locations, you know, we've got surfing clubs and zip lines and caving and all sorts of things taking advantage of the national parks around us. It is definitely one of the more affordable options. Tuition starts around $11,000 US per year and goes up to about $24,000 per year. And again, we've got a significant amount of scholarships and FAFSA scholarship programs and things like that. The other big change with Wales in the last couple of years is our entry requirements. All of the Welsh universities have streamlined their entry requirements in the last 2 years. So they'll all be looking for different numbers of these things. Cardiff University will want a different GPA than Wrexham Glyndŵr University, but we're all going to be looking for these three things. It's your GPA, it's standardized testing, and it's upper level education. GPA, probably the most important thing. What levels are you taking? What classes are you taking? What's your progression from freshman to senior year? The third one, upper level education, also probably very important. Generally, we're looking for AP exams, SAT2 subject tests, but we'll also take community college classes. This year, we are much more flexible. We are looking at work experience, extra references from people that you've worked with potentially in this field, additional research that you may have done in this field, anything to prove that you know what this field is and you're academically prepared to step into year one of a UK degree. So it's just making sure that you're okay at that level. We need to make sure that you're at the same level as British students, basically, who have been very focused for their last couple of years. The standardized testing, it has always been a requirement because we need something standardized worldwide to be able to illustrate, you know, levels. Obviously, that is much more difficult this year, so you will find a lot more flexibility this year, and I hope going forward. I think most of us are reviewing the test optional movement and seeing if there's ways we can implement it on our campus. But for now, technically, it's still required. But every campus is offering flexibility. So just reach out to your US rep. Each of the Welsh campuses does have a US champion. So their whole job is to help you in this process to make sure that your application is as strong as it can possibly be before it gets in front of the admissions counselors, and to answer any of the questions that you've got about that specific institution. So definitely reach out to them because they are your advocate. And in terms of if you are thinking of Welsh Uni, just give a shout out to Daphne and she can put you in touch with me and I'll hook you up with that campus advisor. The other thing, there was a question in the comments about rankings. I would just make sure you point out when you're looking for your courses, definitely look at the university rankings. Those are important. But as was mentioned by the England section, also look at the program ranking. So my university was somewhere in the 50s for rankings, which isn't bad, but it's not, you know, Oxbridge. But my program was 4th in the UK. So that's quite important to be aware of how that program relates to the overall worldview of that. Oh, that's a lot of information in a short amount of time. I think that's my last one. Is there another? Nope, I'm passing it on. Great, thanks very much.
Thank you, Maggie. All right, everybody, it's hard to compare with Wales, but I'll give you a little introduction and help you get to know Scotland a little bit more. So Scotland has a population of around 5 million people. So you can think of this in comparison to England, which has around 55 million people. We are much more sparsely populated. Scotland is great for a student with a sense of adventure. There's so many opportunities to get outdoors, to explore, to really get a lot of fresh air and see some beautiful scenery. Scotland was voted the most beautiful country in the world by Rough Guides in 2019. And I can certainly attest, I lived there for quite some time, and you don't have to travel far to get scenery like what's in this picture. It's full of, mountains, and the highlands are just so beautiful that students really do have the opportunity to explore what's right on their doorstep and in their backyard when they're living in Scotland. But of course, it's also full of so much culture and history. There's so much to take in. So whether you're interested in arts, live music, theater, comedy, there's actually over 200 festivals that take place across Scotland every year. One of my favorites would be the Highland Games, which you also get in the US, but you haven't experienced it till you actually go and attend the Highland Games in Scotland. There are many castles and so much history to take in. So it's great for a student who really wants to immerse themselves. So on the next slide, I'll talk a little bit about, what Scotland has to offer. So Scotland actually has world-leading drug development, biomedical and chemical engineering sectors. So around $8 billion of exports annually from those sectors. You'll find that there's actually a lot of research intensive universities in Scotland, a lot of important research coming from Scottish universities that are globally recognized. Scotland is also a powerhouse of renewable energy. So 90% of the nation's energy was from wind, hydro, and wave power in 2019. So it's great for sustainability and students with an interest in the environment. But what's really cool about Scotland when you're thinking about studying there is there are 15 universities in Scotland, but those universities vary so much from one another. So each of them have a unique offering for students. It varies from the ancient to the traditional to the more modern institutions. But there are numerous universities in Scotland that are included in the World Top 100. And I just want to touch on that 4-year degree structure again, because I saw a couple of questions coming in about flexibility. It is quite similar in terms of, the level of flexibility that you might have with a Scottish degree. Typically speaking, with that 4-year degree structure, you do have to know what you want to study. But when you join us in your first year, you actually take 2, sometimes even 3 classes from outside of your major. So you do get exposure in year 1 to other areas. You do get to choose those areas though. And so normally students can actually have the opportunity to switch to something that they've studied from year 1. It depends on the university. I started as a joint English history major, and I ended up taking English with creative writing instead and dropping history. But there is a certain level of flexibility involved there with that Scottish degree structure. So don't worry too much if you're not sure exactly if that degree that you're applying to is right for you. You can normally change. Also, there are many professional and vocational degrees that are accredited in the USA. So for instance, veterinary medicine at the University of Glasgow is accredited, so you can practice in the US, but many other institutions will have some other vocational degrees that you can also take back and use in the USA. For instance, common law, some states do allow you to sit the bar exam if you've studied law in the UK. Okay, so I'll talk a little bit now about the University of Glasgow. The University of Glasgow was founded in 1451, so we're one of the ancient institutions in the UK. We're the 4th oldest university in the English-speaking world. We have around 29,000 students, but what's really cool about that is that that student body is made up of over 140 nationalities. So students will have a very international experience. They'll meet people from all corners of the world, all walks of life. It's a very diverse campus. As mentioned before, most of our degrees are 4 years in length, and we are a member of the Russell Group institutions in the UK. And just to round it up in my next slide, we do have a thriving student life. So we have over 250 clubs and societies, 50 sports clubs. You won't have to, sacrifice on that student life side of things outside of your academics. There's plenty to get involved with. International students are guaranteed accommodation. Our tuition starts at around $25,000 US per year of study. We are FAFSA approved, and we also accept the GI Bill, but there are some merit-based scholarships available for students as well. So that just gives you a rough overview of the University of Glasgow, but I am more than happy to answer any questions about us as well. And with that, I'll pass it on to Peter.
Hi folks, it's me again, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about Northern Ireland. I love a good map, so here's another one, and there is Northern Ireland. And I know what you've been thinking all the way through this presentation, which is, well, the UK sounds wonderful and Ireland sounds wonderful. Oh, I totally wish I could go to both. Well, good news is you can, because you can come to Northern Ireland, because we are in the United Kingdom, but quite obviously we are also on the island of Ireland. So we follow the UK system and kind of the same education system as England and Wales. So there's 3-year undergraduate majors. But very much that Irish lifestyle. We are officially the safest, happiest and cheapest part of the UK to live in. So you don't really need too many reasons beyond that. Unofficially, we are the best, but I think my colleagues across the water would probably disagree with me heartily on that one. I represent Queen's University Belfast. We are based in Belfast, which is the capital city of Northern Ireland. We're the 9th oldest university in the UK, founded in 1845. So we've been around for 175 years. We are also part of the Russell Group, like Glasgow, which has been compared to the likes of the Ivy League in the US. It's not strictly accurate, but it is a group of 24 research-intensive universities in the United Kingdom. We have about 25,000 students at Queen's, of which 3,000 are international. So really good, diverse population on campus. As I said, we like to think we have a little bit of the best of both worlds, in that we have that internationally recognized UK education, but also that internationally recognized Irish welcome and Irish lifestyle that everybody is familiar with. For us, our particular research strengths are in the areas of international relations and politics. We have always been a political hotbed, it would be fair to say, but in more recent times as well, look at things like medicine, nursing and STEM, particularly computer science is very strong with the industry in Belfast. And again, guaranteed affordable housing on campus, which is right in the city centre in the capital. A few interesting little facts about Queen's. Our Chancellor will be familiar to many of you. It is Secretary Hillary Clinton. The Clintons and other key US political figures have a long history with Ireland and with Northern Ireland in particular. And the Clintons have been friends of Queen's for a very long time. So we're very pleased to have Hillary as Chancellor. We've churned out a few Nobel Prize winners in our time. Seamus Heaney, who I'm sure you've all read some poetry of, and Lord David Trimble, who won the Nobel Peace Prize as well. A few notable alumni to come out of Queen's. Pretty much anyone who's ever been the First Minister of Northern Ireland has studied at Queen's, as well as a couple of presidents of Ireland, including Mary McAleese. And a few little interesting facts just to change the tune. Queen's actually held its own seat in the UK Parliament all the way up until 1950. So that was a fun little side activity for students to go and be an MP. And also, although we've been around for quite a long time, we've been pretty forward thinking for all of that. We have female deans in place at Queen's before Oxford ever let female students in the door. So while we've been around for a while, we've been moving forward, and we'd love to have you as part of that journey. And that will do me, and I'm going to hand off to my colleague south of the border in Cork.
Thanks, Peter. Hi, Irish Maggie, back to talk to you again a little bit about the Republic of Ireland and then University College Cork. So as Peter mentioned, the island of Ireland is a very safe and welcoming place. We are known as some of the friendliest people in the world. So, from wherever you're from, we're known as Ireland of the welcomes, and we are happy to welcome you to our shores. Ireland is a very globally connected multicultural society. So we don't only have a lot of our graduates all around the world doing different things, and quite a few in the United States. I'm sure a lot of you who are watching today have some type of Irish heritage, whether it's through your parents or grandparents, or maybe a few generations back. But in addition to that, we also welcome a lot of people from outside of Ireland into our country every year. So whether that's people coming to travel to us to see some of our beautiful heritage sites and landscapes, or people in our country to do business or study. Ireland is an EU member country. We're actually the only English speaking member of the EU, which is really nice for us, because a lot of companies want to have a base in Europe in an English speaking country. So we are able to host not only our own internationally recognized companies, but also multinationals throughout a lot of really top industries. So we're actually the home to some of the top companies in industries like financial services, pharmaceuticals, medical technology, and food science and entrepreneurship as well. And then again, I mentioned, the scenery. We are home to gorgeous landscapes, coastlines, mountains, but also really fun and interesting cities with a lot of wonderful things to do. So next slide, please, Peter. And then for studying in Ireland, I mentioned earlier, we have 9 different universities on very diverse campuses. So kind of whatever you're looking for, whether it is an urban, suburban campus, maybe a rural campus, or a more modern looking one, medieval, or maybe a Gothic looking campus, all of those are options in Ireland. Our programs are internationally recognized and can be finished up in either 3 to 4 years. And we do have 1-year top master's programs as well. Hugely vibrant student life. So basically anything that you're passionate about pursuing while you're in high school now, whether it's dance or drama or volunteer work, or maybe languages, whatever it is, you can continue that on, or maybe try something new, and at the very least meet some really fun people. To study in Ireland, you actually don't need an entry visa if you are a US or Canadian citizen. And once you finish your studies with us, you're able to stay on for 1 year if you finish up an undergraduate degree, or 2 years if you finish a master's degree in Ireland. So that's a little bit about us generally. I'm going to talk to you really quickly about University College Cork now. In Cork, as you saw on the last slide, we are down in the southern part of the country. Cork is the 2nd largest city in Ireland, although I think Corkonians would like to call Cork the real capital of Ireland. Maybe don't say that to our friends in Dublin, but anyway, in Cork, you will find everything that people love about living in kind of small European cities. So access to arts, entertainment, beautiful historical buildings, business and politics as well, but also easy travel to the rest of Ireland and the rest of Europe via our transport links through bus, train, and airports. UCC itself, we were founded in 1845, and while we were outside the city limits during our founding, the city of Cork has grown around us. So we're only about a 10-minute walk from the heart of the city center. So you really get the best of both worlds, like a proper campus with some beautiful architecture, as you can see here, but also very close to the city. So lots to do. We're #1 for the student experience in Ireland, and we're also very committed to our sort of diversity and equity in our teaching and learning. So we're a leader in improvement of gender equality in education, and we're also a very diverse campus when it comes to our student makeup. We have students from over 104 countries every year. We're also very well known for our commitment to sustainability. So we were voted the first green campus in the world, and we are 9th in the world for sustainability. We also have a lot of great links to industry, which helps with placements in our internships and helping our students find careers afterwards. So one more slide and then I'll finish up. We have over 130 degree programs at University College Cork. We have 4 different colleges within our university and lots to choose from between those colleges. As I mentioned, our programs are direct entry. So you do have to have a general idea of what you'd like to study. But Ashley kind of mentioned in Scotland, you can kind of focus more or less broadly on either humanities or sciences or something like that, and then sort of hone your interest in from there. The same would be true with us. So maybe you start out kind of thinking you're interested in English, but move over to history, that's fine. At UCC, we're probably the best known for our STEM programming like science, engineering, health sciences, food science, but also humanities and social sciences. We have a huge emphasis on practical learning. So most of our programs would actually include either an internship or work placement and or study abroad as part of the curriculum. And that kind of commitment to nurturing work-ready and world-ready students it really contributes to the fact that our students, about 94% of them are employed within 6 months of graduation. We have some really great links to industry in and around Cork as well. So that's also very helpful. I mentioned that we have a direct application and we open for rolling admission in December every year. And there are scholarships available for US students too. So yeah, that is it for UCC. Thanks so much for listening.
And folks, that pretty much is that. That was not quite a whistle-stop tour of the UK and Ireland. Thank you so much for everyone who has sent questions in so far. We are going to address those. So I'm going to ask Miss Adler to come on again and maybe talk us through some of the questions that have been coming on.
Absolutely. I don't know about anybody else. I could listen to this like over and over and over again because it's just like amazing. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say that the reps in the UK and Ireland are also funnier than the American reps. Anyway, all right, we've got a lot of questions. So thanks to those of you who have been answering them along the way. So for the participants, go ahead and read through the questions because some of them are quite thoroughly answered. There were a lot of good things about housing, medicine, visas, testing, etc., citizenship. So do read those. And then let's see, open questions currently. Okay, how to prepare the UK college entrance exam? Who would like to grab that one?
Well, I suppose it would depend to what exam they're referring. So as we've mentioned before, that there isn't really an entrance examination as such, apart from a few areas. So there is one which by name sounds similar, called the UK CAT. It's an entry examination specifically for medicine. There's another one called BMAT, which is for medicine, and the LNAT. But really, we don't, at least from our side, don't really have them, apart from those few exceptions and the couple of universities that require them.
Correct me if I'm wrong, for students who are currently seniors, for most majors, assuming that they've taken like some sort of AP work or have like the basic testing, generally like it's fine to apply. For things like medicine, where there is a lengthier and more complicated process, students who are younger would be able to apply for those things reasonably, though they're selective, but there's enough time to do those sorts of exams if needed. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, great. Okay, next question. I'm having trouble with my UCAS application. Are there any resources you recommend to help clarify some things?
Yeah, I'll take that one. So my first recommendation would be the toolkits on the UCAS website are super helpful. It does depend on what exactly your issue is. If it is something that you really need advice with, then get in touch with a rep or your counselor and ask for a little bit of guidance on that. What is the sticking point so we can help with that issue. But if it's something, for instance, how do I put in my US qualifications? What exactly does the personal statement need to look like? Then those types of tips and advice are located on the UCAS website. But for everything else, I would just say feel free to get in touch with people who can help you.
Thank you, Ashley. Next question. What are disability accommodations like?
I can take that one if you'd like. I talked about this briefly in the last session. The one thing I always want to push across is that disability and support is quite different in the UK, I think, than the US. There's almost no stigma attached to it. It's very expected that you will take up the student support that is on offer on our campuses. It's not like, oh, you might need support. It's like, no, there's support. What do you need? It's very practical. It's very straightforward. A lot of our applications will even have lines saying, would you like to declare your disability? And that is so we can prepare and make sure that we have everything that we need on campus for your arrival. I recently took a blind student through an application for the School of Music, and they had to buy new software to ensure that they had everything that he would need to support that program. And now he's staying on for a master's. So like these things can be put in place, and we ask so it can be put in place before you arrive. So that's just to show you that it's a bit different. In terms of what you could have access to, it's all the things you would expect. There's loads of learning support, note taking, essay writing, extra time on exams, different colored paper for your note taking. I didn't know that was a thing. That's a thing. So lots of different ways that you could access support. Anything that you would need for any kind of physical support is a given. We have, rooms with ramp access and vibrating pillows if you're hearing impaired to hear the fire alarm, and all sorts of small things that, of course, I hadn't considered before entering into the support side of things. But there's a lot of opportunities, there's a lot of options, and it's kind of expected that you'll take advantage of them. So if you're concerned about a specific thing, again, I would reach out to that rep at that institution and just have an open conversation. That's what they're there for. If something comes up while you're a student, again, the resources and the pathways for you to get help are so numerous. You can talk to your individual RA, you can talk to your personal tutor, you can talk to your pastoral support officer, which is within your department, you can talk to the international office, you can talk to the support office. You see what I mean? So there's so many ways to get help because it's just built into the infrastructure of our programs.
Thank you, Maggie. All right, we're coming up on 90 minutes, so I think we're going to just answer these last few here and let everyone get to sleep. But these are great questions. Okay, can one student have 2 UCAS accounts in order to write 2 different essays?
I can be the bad guy on that one. That's hard. That's a hard no. Absolutely not. What you can do, if you want to submit separate applications to universities, you are welcome to submit applications directly, but it is either UCAS or direct applications, and absolutely not both. So if you use UCAS and you use 1 or 5 of your choices, those are your applications within the main application cycle. There are opportunities later in the cycle. Should those offers not work out, you change your mind later in the cycle, you can go back through a system called clearing. That's getting very complex into the detail. If you really want to write different essays, then direct applications is the way to go. It's, to be honest, for us, and I don't think anybody here would recommend that as an option with the UK. Obviously, Ireland, go for it, direct applications to everybody. But for the UK, we don't recommend that because of what we've said about choosing your major, and you're writing an essay for a major. You're writing it for a subject. You're not writing it for a university. You're not writing it for a particular class or particular city. You're writing it for a subject. So there should really be no need to write different essays. If you really feel that desire, you really feel that need, then you can apply separately directly, but not both.
Thank you, Peter. And I would add to that, naturally there's the tendency to try to compare the US and UK or other countries, right? And as much as possible, try to learn about each system on the face of it, because they're really quite different. Like the concept for us of applying to only 5 schools in the US is like, what? Nobody does that. And it's just different there. You will find that the application system, and this would apply to Ireland as well, is quite transparent. Most countries are quite transparent compared to the US. It's kind of shocking. Like if you if you look at the qualifications and you are pretty in the ballpark and you don't bomb your essay, you got a pretty good chance to get in. And I mean, there are some extremely selective ones, but for the most part. So there's no sense in applying to, Oxford or Cambridge or wherever when you're nowhere near the qualifications. You're wasting a choice. And it's not like, oh, well, maybe. It's like, just don't do that. It just doesn't work that way there. There's no such thing as like, the reach school, safety school type of thing in the way that it exists here. So learn about how it works in the UK and do ask these questions because it will help you wrap your head around how it works there. But you really will find that it's so much more transparent. And then as Peter mentioned, there's something called clearing, which is like later the colleges tell you who has space. Can't even imagine that here. So it's really quite refreshing. And if students want to learn more about it, we did have a UCAS specific workshop a couple of weeks ago that was recorded that will be posted. So there's more info on that. Okay, I'll get through the rest of these. Okay, what are the differences in internship opportunities between the US and the UK? Who would like to grab that?
I can go again. I mean, like the main difference you will find is that we don't talk so much about internships, we talk about work placements, and the big difference in a lot of those is you'll get paid to do them, which is a significant difference. When we talk about work placements, a lot of our programs, both in the UK and Ireland, will give you the option of taking a full year's work placement where you would go and work full time for a company. And it's not an internship in the sense of doing photocopying and running to the coffee shop for the boss's lunch. Like a work placement in the UK is a real job, and it's not quite sort of graduate entry level, but it's not far off it. Like you are expected to contribute and apply the skills that you've learned in the couple of years already, and then take that learning back to your university. So it is very much doing the job that you are educating yourself for. So that is the main difference. It is a proper job. In terms of opportunities, different universities will have links, and this is where kind of getting an understanding of both the UK and Ireland and their respective strengths in different regions for industries. So you look at places like Dublin and Belfast, which have huge tech industries in them. And if you're thinking software engineering, those are fantastic places to go. You can look, if you're looking at things, be it the arts, maybe in the south of England, the concentration of that in around London, fantastic. Finance, again, in those campuses close to London, but different areas will have different specialities, and some of my colleagues have touched on those. So understanding the regional strengths, you can move about. You can study in Glasgow and do a work placement in London if you want, and vice versa. But understand it is very much work. It is not just sitting in the corner, kind of shining the boss's shoes on that side of things. It's a proper little job for a year to get you in the mindset of doing what you're studying.
Super. And if we could equate that to something here, it'd be like a co-op. So schools like Northeastern and Drexel that are really well known for a co-op program, similar to that. Okay, we've got four. Yeah,
sorry, just include, there's also some short-term options. So if it's a 3-year degree, there are some courses that will have an internship or work experience built into the program. So it's not necessarily going to be a full year out. It could just be, a term or a summer placement or something like that. So there are some shorter term options built in as well.
Great. All right, we've got 4 questions left, and we're going to cut it off after that. How easy is it to get medical and psychiatric assistance? So Maggie talked about support earlier. Anything to add there?
Very easy. If you need a doctor's appointment, you call up at 8 a.m. and you say, I need to see a doctor, and they tell you your time to come in. So quite straightforward. And everything starts with your GP, your general practitioner, your family doctor. So you meet with them, and if you need any additional assistance like psychiatric care or more specialized treatment, then they would recommend you for that. So it always starts with your GP. So you do start to build quite a nice relationship with that office, and for mine as an undergrad, it was tuck and roll out of my bed, and there was the doctor's office. So it's very close to campus, and we usually have a surgery, is what they call it, a surgery associated with each campus. So you do have an understanding between the students in that surgery.
Lovely. Okay. How do you convert ABCD grading to 100% grading, please? I would like to calculate myself to see if I meet 88% or 92%. Not sure what that's referring to.
I was a little bit confused by that particular question. Looking from Peter's face, you might be the same. I mean, what I will say is that we advertise on our web pages, on our specific US web pages, the entry requirements that we have, and it's something which you can discuss with us. But we're quite clear and open about what it is that we'll expect from US students. In terms of conversion for specific percentages, not sure, but it's something which reps can look into for you. So yeah, if you have a certificate that you want assessing by the university, just drop them a mail and they'll be able to take a look at it for you.
Great, thank you. Does that also apply to IEP students? I believe this was also referring to disabilities accommodations. So an IEP is an American construct. So I don't know, how would a student handle that? That's an individualized education plan for special education students.
We have the same thing. So you would have a learning plan put in place before you arrive. If you declared on your application, somebody from the disability office would reach out to you and you would build that plan prior to arrival. So everything was set, ready to go. And sometimes that includes arriving early so we can get visa exceptions if you need additional time. Again, this blind student came over with his dog to learn the roads between his dorm and the classroom. So we were able to, help set that up, and whatever is kind of necessary can be built into that as long as it's declared on the application.
Amazing. Okay. Do students find work placement or the university find the work placement for the students?
I will
correct that one. Oh, please carry on, Maggie. That's fine.
I was just going to say, for the work placements that are a part of a particular curriculum, I think that would likely be organized by your program coordinator. So, there are some, they're not going to let you sleep through it. Like, you actually do need to do the work and show up for the interview prep and all of that. But it wouldn't be up to you necessarily to, go out and kind of like knock on doors and things like that to try to find yourself, those placements that are part of your curriculum, generally speaking. And that's for Ireland. I would assume that would be fairly similar in the UK as well.
Yeah, a lot of head nods. Okay. Great. Okay, we got one last question that snuck in, and this is going to be the last one. Which cities are technology centers in England, similar to Belfast and Dublin?
It's a good question. It's 4 in the morning. That's my excuse. I can't really think. Peter, would you have any insight?
No,
I mean, like
Sorry,
London, kind of, obviously London has everything. Other up and coming tech hubs, you're looking at like Newcastle is doing well at the minute. But no, sadly, I'm not an expert on English cities, Tim.
I know. I've let my country down, haven't I? Daphne, I might have to get back to you on that one.
That's okay. You can think about it for our session tomorrow morning. That's cool.
Appreciate
All right,
it.
we've got to let these guys get some sleep. I am eternally grateful to all of you. And for those of us who are still with us, I really hope that one of the things that you heard here is that studying in either the UK or Ireland, and this would apply kind of anywhere, is approachable, affordable, transparent, and so personalized, compared to our American system. Like, look at all these people that are here to help you and the flexibility. And they really, truly are happy to answer questions and for you to reach out to them. So please do reach out, and we're going to have this video posted tomorrow morning. We've got our Study in England session, specifically England. Next week, we've got Northern Ireland, Ireland, Scotland, and Wales, also Asia, different topic. So you're going to see every one of these guys again next week and or tomorrow. So please do continue to join us. And thank you again to all of our wonderful panelists, and extra special thank you to those of you who are at 4 in the morning right now. And to everyone who attended tonight, thank you again. Good night, and see you soon.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you.
Guys.
Have a great night, everyone.
Good night, guys.